Welcome to Real Estate in the Tri-State, where we talk about all things buying, selling, and investing in the Dubuque area. Featuring experienced locals giving you their real estate insight. My name is Abby Rottler, and here is your host, my husband, Rob Rottler.
Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate in the Tri-State. Today is episode number 23 with a guest who is a fellow realtor in Dubuque who has only been doing it for just over a couple years, but has quickly climbed his way toward being one of the top agents in our area. He is licensed to sell all types of real estate in Iowa and Illinois, but in 2020 he had made some massive strides in commercial real estate listings, which will be exciting to share with you listeners, along with the rest of his experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, the great and powerful Steve Davis.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excited to be here, Rob.
Hey, I'm excited to have you here. Yeah. Folks, if you're not watching the video version and you're just audio, just understand this is one of the best dressed realtors in our area on the mic today. Always rocking a nice blazer, good fashion, up in the fashion in our industry in the area.
Yeah, so definitely. Best dressed on the podcast, right?
Yeah, there we go. So Steve, do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself so we can get to know you better?
Sure, absolutely. So born and raised in Dubuque, Dubuque senior, graduate, 96, 97. And went away to school, went to Buena Vista. So I know as a Wartburg guy, you can appreciate that conference in terms of athletics and whatnot. So got recruited to play football out of Buena Vista. They had a good business school, and I knew that was the direction I wanted to go. So everything seemed to make sense. So headed out there and studied business management and entrepreneurship for 4 years, and did some internships in Colorado in over the summer, and spent some time out there over spring break, and got a job out of those internships as working for a financial advisor down in Des Moines, actually. So graduated, moved to Des Moines. Got licensed as a financial advisor, registered investment advisor as well down there, and spent about 3 years there before Heather and I got married. And Heather's born and raised in Dubuque also, so we were both living down there together. We're high school sweethearts. So
that's awesome.
We decided to get married and bought a townhouse down there in West Des Moines. And shortly after that said, you know what, if we're going to be having a family and raising kids and all of that type of stuff, we should really be where we know teachers and doctors and we know the community. Cool things going on in Dubuque at that time as well. So made a decision to move back and I guess it would have been 2004. We moved back to Dubuque. Got a job with Prudential Retirement, so client consultant there, servicing clients really all over the country. So it was kind of an interesting thing from going from a fully commissioned financial advisor type of thing to a more base plus commission role as a client consultant with Prudential Retirement here in town. So very, very structured environment, a lot different than what I had been used to for a couple of years there in Des Moines. And so I quickly learned that type of environment wasn't for me. So it needed a little bit more free form and do things the way you want to do them, but but still under a certain umbrella. So started looking for another job. Opportunity came up with medical associates at the health plan. And so I went over there into a sales position at Medical Associates, and spent 12 years there selling group health insurance to area employers. So we managed or we served somewhere, over that time period between 325, 350 clients. So local area employers, about a 60-mile radius of Dubuque, which is nice to be able to travel a little bit and go out and see people and visit their businesses and those types of things, but also still be home at night. So much more my speed. I needed to be a little bit more grounded. We were starting to have kids and all of that type of stuff at that time. So it worked out pretty well, and really enjoed that, and figured out that I wasn't completely happy. So it was, I knew something needed to change. And so I started pursuing different potential opportunities there. Loved the organization, fantastic organization, going in the right direction. But it took me and Heather sitting down to figure out what to do, and decided that this was the route to go. So kind of an interesting process to get there.
Yeah.
We made the decision and we went for it. So
love it. A couple things here. We're going to unpack it a little bit.
Sure.
I love how you went deep into your backstory and really just kind of gave us a timeline feel to what led you to where you are now, because it's always an interesting story. You got to kind of realize where you've been to kind of see where you're at now and then where you're going. So love that you kind of broke into that. And then also, the honesty in, I wasn't fully happy, something needed to change, that right there, that's amazing that you were able to, sit down and identify that and then take action to make something happen, make yourself happier. And, that's awesome, because, many people might sit and stay in that job for far too long, and then it, start to have health issues, those type of things. So that is cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was one of those situations where the money's good, the money's really good. That was not a concern whatsoever. It was just I got to, and some people say call it a midlife crisis, call it whatever you want, but you really sit down and say, okay, what am I doing with my life? I don't have a plan, that type of thing, and it's one of the most liberating things when you kind of go through this process after having gone through it. Like, you don't have a plan early on for the people that don't. So I didn't realize some people do, but I was kind of behind in that regard, that I really didn't. And so when I figured out I really should, I learned that I didn't see myself doing that when I was 60 years old or 70 years old. And so it's okay, something needs to change. What do I do at that point? And at that point it was, how do I get there? And the process from that point is where, to me, it gets really, really interesting, because you're going, again, it's a really good salary base plus commission, but essentially a salaried role. And you've built up a good, reputation and all of that type of stuff over a dozen years. And it's a really difficult thing to walk away from. Quite honestly. So, but it's one of those things where you just realize that there's more to life. Yeah. So
I believe it. And, I don't know, some people can identify, some can't. Do you remember a certain time or something that really flipped the switch for you there on that career change? Or was it just kind of ongoing thoughts and it just kind of got to a point where something needed to happen? Or was there like a certain thing that you could point to, like, that was it, I needed to make a change, and we did?
Yeah, maybe a little of both. So for a while, for maybe a few years, it was, this, I'm not extremely happy, but things are good. Things aren't bad. I've got my health. I've got a great family, and, money's fine. That's not an issue. But it just wasn't, I wasn't excited to get out of bed every day, and so it was kind of a long process to get into that point. But the switch maybe was in the fall of the year, really busy, super huge growth mode, and a lot of things changing. And again, I think for the better, but it was so many hours. So we owned a rental property, a single family home, and that home needed some work on it, roof and that type of stuff. Everyone's busy. I didn't have a good network of people really built up at that point, of people, that would kind of respond to me. So you make calls, nobody returns the calls and those types of things. And I just didn't have time to deal with it at that point. And so, I made the decision to sell it. And so we listed it, put it on the market, sold first day, way more than asking price and all of that type of stuff. I had good advice from my agent at that time. And everything went right. And so that process was really great. We get to the end of the year between the holidays, between Christmas and New Year's, and I took that week off. Didn't have any plans. My wife was working, so I was at home with the kids that week. And with no agenda, doing nothing, it was a time for me just to stop and put the phone down and walk away from work for a little bit and just say, truly, what the hell am I doing? And figure it out. So I read Rich Dad Poor Dad during that time, and
it's over.
At that point, it was over.
It's over.
So it was interesting. I had that book for a number of years beforehand, and never picked it up. It always sat there. I'm like, I should read that. I really should, but I don't think I want to. Things are good. Yeah. And it sat there on the bookshelf for the longest time. So my dad had read it a number of years earlier and gave it to me. He worked as an auto mechanic for one company for 25 years, and he read the book, quit. Basically took basically took 6 months off and started his own auto repair business, and which he ran very successfully for 15 or 20 years after. And so having that as a model, it was like, okay, maybe I should read the book, and I finally did, and it was over at that point.
It's over. It's a dagger.
Yeah.
It cannot be denied. We've joked on the show before, there should be a letter of resignation like template at the back, like the very last page. All right, you've read your book now. Here you go. Yeah. Poor employers probably hate Robert Kiyosaki for that one.
I can imagine they probably do. Yeah. The interesting thing about it, though, is I don't think it's for everybody. I mean, I think everybody could read it and take something different away from it. But for the people that, for the W-2 people that are going, man, could I be doing more? Do I want to do more? It's those people who are not just really content going, this is right for me. Those people I think will be like, you guys are crazy to think that, so I kind of have that perspective too, but I wasn't in that boat. It was definitely a thought process of, could I be doing more? Yeah. Could I be building something for myself?
If you're thinking, could I be doing more? And you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you might as well just plan on writing that letter, resignation.
Game, set, match.
Yeah. Right. So, Buena Vista, did you, so the lake there, is that really shallow?
It is.
Is that like, can you actually do recreational stuff on it? Because I remember like driving by in the boat, or driving by in the bus for some football games over there. I remember seeing like, oh, this lake is beautiful. There's not a whole lot of like boat lifts or anything around here, like what's going on. And then I think I remember at the time looking at the depth of it and seeing that it was kind of shallow in some areas, but I mean, that must, did you have some recreational, some swimming?
Yeah, for sure. So if I recall, it's out in the middle of the plains, right? So there's not a lot of hills over there, not nearly as much as this side of the state. So everything's pretty flat, but I think at the deepest point, it was about 13 feet. But there was boating, to the extent that you can in that amount. Really good fishing lake. So really good walleye lake, if you know what you're doing over there. So that was definitely a plus for being out there. The pheasant hunting out there is absolutely amazing. So I hadn't done that growing up, but got into doing that a little bit while I was there, which is kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah, that is cool. And then these internships in Colorado, that had to be quite the experience. Had you been out there before?
Yes, but it had been a while. I have family out there, and a friend of the family worked in the business and kind of looked to him saying, hey, it'd be kind of fun to spend a summer in Colorado. Can you help me find some opportunities there? Actually, I did one summer. I worked for Janus Funds, which is a now defunct mutual fund company. But I worked kind of in their HR department. Amazing experience seeing. Basically, I was working on spreadsheets of incomes of people in that industry. And it was like, holy cow, these people are getting like $200,000 bonuses a month. And it was just outrageous seeing some of this stuff. And they kind of didn't manage things very well and are now under. But that was just kind of an out of the blue thing, but a really good friend of the family was well established as a financial advisor out there, and in their office then invited me in to just do some sales work on the side, help preparing some reports and those types of things for the financial advisors. And it was a really interesting business. So
yeah, very cool. And then the other thing about your past before you became a realtor, like investment advising, retirement stuff, group mutual or group insurance plans, yep. Especially this investment stuff, like that probably helps you out quite a bit in realtor work now. Like people, do people come to you and, they want to know how much money they should put down or how much they should spend? Like, do you see that still serving you today? Like very well, like something that, separates you, maybe from others because you have this background in investing and retirement?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know that I certainly don't get into advising them on their finances to the extent that it goes beyond my role as an agent. But I, as an unlicensed financial advisor, I can get in trouble, obviously. But definitely those experiences, and I mean it's a culmination of life experiences in general, but that certainly helps, I think. Yeah. I had a minor in economics at Buena Vista, so that's kind of that angle of it for me. I'm kind of nerdy that way. I really enjoy those types of things, so it made sense, and I think that still helps me now. More so, you mentioned on the commercial stuff, probably more so on that side than it does on the residential side of my business today. So. But yeah, those things all play in. It's life experiences. Some people talk about the real estate agent exam, that type of stuff, and they had a hard time with trust accounts and those types of things. Some of those aspects of the exam, and I'm like, that was the easy stuff because it's like I had all that, and everything from prudential retirement and those types of things. So you learned about benefit plans as well and had that background. So, yeah. That's
awesome. Good deal. It seems to all the stars kind of aligned for you there. What was it? Do you remember, why you chose real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. And it to your question about the financial advisor and that kind of background knowledge, I really feel like everything in my life has led me to this point. I didn't know it at the time, but it's since that decision between the holidays, everything's been extremely intentional from that point on. The real thing for me was that rental property. So part of the thought process at that time, and this kind of, I'll say, coming to Jesus moment during this week of reflection or whatever you want to call it, the rental property, it was a really fantastic investment, the best investment we'd ever made in our lives. And that's going back to the financial advisor days and stocks and mutual funds and all of this type of stuff. There's at that time, the REITs, the real estate investment trusts, were really starting to take hold and all that type of stuff. So all of that stuff plays in. This rental property, the single family home, was by far the best investment we'd ever made. And we sold it because we didn't have time to manage it. And it was like, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done. And you try to live life with no regrets, but that's a regrettable action. Yeah, for sure. So it was, okay, this could be interesting, so I went back to our agent at that time, and I said, I think that was a mistake. We want to try to find some more investments and that type of stuff. The process that we went through, and I say we because my wife was just as much as involved as I was. One of the biggest pieces that led us there was we sat down and it was just going to be me first, but did a personality test. And it goes beyond, just kind of identifying if, where on the disc spectrum you fall.
Yeah.
It was going through all these questions. I don't know if it was like 76 or 8 questions or something like that it was, but it literally took us like 2 days to go through that. So we started in on this, and I said, I think we should do this together, first of all, because the way I see me is different than the way other people see me, I think. And so I want your honest input on, we'll both read the question, think about it, and then, come together and say, how would you respond for me in that situation? And so it's learning about yourself, first of all, and who you are, what your strengths are, but also what other people see as being your strengths and that type of stuff, what you really enjoy. And it just kind of leads to that. So all things led to this type of business. Reflecting on it a little bit more, we built our house in 2012. Literally a week after we moved in, I was on the computer looking at properties. I've always kind of been a real estate junkie, like, oh, what's going on in the market? Like a lot of people are. I think a lot of people just generally have an interest in what's happening, what's being sold, what are prices, and all of that type of stuff. But my wife just about, I think she just about divorced me about a week after we built and moved into our house, because I'm looking at real estate, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just curious.
We're not moving again.
I don't want to move.
That's
so,
funny.
You think back, as you're going through this process, you think back on some of those things, and it's like, yeah, this is really what it is. So, I mean, everything, working construction jobs in the summers in high school and college or early college years and stuff like that. It's, you have this just general knowledge of buildings, and helps me, with my clients. We walk into a home, and, it's like, I can point out to them some of the things, for better or for worse, what they should be looking for. And I think that helps me in this business, just to say, you can trust me that I'm looking out for your best interest. I'm going to help you through this process. I'm not just looking to get a deal done.
Love that. A couple of things I love about that. The personality test, asking your wife, I just did that exact thing. Literally, like, I took a personality test this morning. At the end of this book, Think Like a Monk, I just finished it today. There's a personality test. It was like 30 questions or something, but I took it this morning, and I was reading about it maybe a day or two ago, about personalities in that book. And I was like, I thought to myself what I thought my personality was. And then I asked my wife, same thing. Just like, it's interesting to hear kind of different perspectives there.
Exactly. I think it really helps you identify who you truly are. And if you don't really know, and I don't think I really knew, quite honestly. So,
and then the other thing, the construction work, like, that is a huge, huge benefit to you and all your clients. Yeah. I've just been rehabbing basically a full gut on my first investment property.
Yeah.
And I know so much more than I did 6 months ago about just construction and building and what to look for, especially a lot of the mechanical stuff, and like some of the different systems in every house. And I don't know, it's been invaluable to me, but I definitely can see where that's valuable to you as well.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah. So you got your first investment because, you were studying, you were looking at other investors, and you were studying investment, and that was kind of your profession. You were thinking you were going to diversify your investments, and you thought real estate would be a good one. So having not known, you were interested in it, but you weren't like, you weren't actively.
It wasn't like a big major master plan or anything like that. It was just, if we can acquire a property and do that, then that would be kind of cool. Yeah. So it was just kind of flying by the seat of your pants type of thing. Mm-hmm.
So then, so talk about like knowing yourself, knowing your strengths. What would be like, what's your philosophy? Do you have like what you really feel like is your value that you can give to your clients?
Put simply, empathy over emotion. And I think any situation is, there's bound to be some emotion involved. And especially when you're dealing with real estate transactions, there's sometimes more of that than what's needed. And too much of that, some of it's a good thing. Too much of that can get people into dangerous situations, I think. So it's one of those things where, it's helping somebody through a transaction is really important to me. I think I see my role as helping to make sure that they're staying on track with their decision making too. So it's providing the information that they need to make a decision, and sometimes helping them not rush into decisions, quite honestly. So that's the biggest piece. And just kind of philosophically, I just think that there's too much emotion.
Yeah.
And it's just, too much is not a good thing. So
right. I agree.
Yeah. And not to get political or anything like that, but a lot of what's happening in the world, I think, is people not being able to control their emotions. So I, it's kind of nerdy, but the, Ryan Holiday has brought back the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. He's making that cool again. So if I'm reading anything, it's some of those types of things. I find some really interesting things there. And part of this transition into this career is I'm finding out now is kind of based on that. So one of the things that I always keep in mind is have empathy, but not be over emotional. It's realize that someday you're going to die. I think that's one of the kind of the core beliefs of Stoicism, is that at the end of the day, you're going to die. I mean, it's inevitable. And
it's inevitable.
So why overreact? Why get too bent out of shape about anything? The world is what it is. Mm-hmm. And it allows you, I mean, without being reckless, obviously, you have to do analysis and all of that type of stuff, but why not take the chance? What do you have to lose? But I mean, at the end of the day, what do you have to lose?
Love that philosophy. Yeah. A lot of the self-development books and things that I study will mention death as well. Like, if you think about your death, and this is getting deep on the podcast, folks. If you're thinking about your death, and it's like, at that point, you're going to be looking back on your life and thinking like, did I build, did I have deep and authentic connections? Did I really live and have fun and enjoy myself? Did I leave an impact, and did I matter, and all those things? And it's like, that's going to happen someday. And if you're not doing something now, it goes back to your transition, like out of, your previous job into Realtor, like, at that point, it's like, you got to really, if you're not enjoying it, you got to find some way to do it.
Find something to do it. Yeah. It's not going to last forever. So why not be happy? So
love it.
Yeah. It's, one of the other things I'll mention there is that personality test. And then the other really impactful thing that I did, and it kind of goes into this as well, is to write your own obituary. It seems, and again, not to be overly morbid here, but we're supposed to be having fun, right?
Yeah.
But that is by far the most powerful thing I've done in my life, is to write my own obituary. And it's obviously not, okay, what does it read today? But it is, it really allows you to, if you do it right and really think about it and spend some time on it, it allows you to identify really what do you want to accomplish in life? Where do you want to be? Write your own eulogy, that someone else is going to say at your funeral. And, where are you at the end of life? And if you know where you're at there, then you can basically reverse engineer back to today, and that sets you on the track of where you need to go. It goes into, all about your why and that type of stuff too. But that's one really, for me, it was a very effective way of getting to where I need to be today and what do I need to do tomorrow.
So perfect. I love that you said that. I too have dabbled in those activities, and just through some of the things I read and follow, and they suggest that, and it's like, these are mind-blowing things.
Yeah.
You know where you want to be, you know where you're at. It's just like you can kind of work it.
How do you bridge it? How do you get there?
Yeah. So good. So talk about some of the differences. So you have kind of blown up this year, last year, commercial listings. Talk about commercial listings a bit.
Yeah, so it's opportunistic, I guess. I feel like I've put in the work to get there, but it also takes some luck, to be quite honest. So right place, right time type of stuff. I'm certainly not going to say it wasn't about that, but it's something that I've been, people within our firm and that type of stuff have been open with them about is a direction that I'd like to go and focus more on going forward is the commercial side of things. So again, everything is very intentional for me at this point. Everything is conscious. So seeing who I am and how I do things and how people perceive me, my experience, and this is going back to the health plan and working with employers and that type of thing. It's that decision-making process, understanding how business owners, CFOs, those types of people make decisions versus a home seller or a home buyer. They're two completely different things. So I would say it's more of my comfort zone, and it's what I did for a dozen years at the health plan. So it's kind of having that background, it makes sense to me. So,
working with business owners.
Right. Yeah. Or that type of philosophy where you're making decisions based on data rather than emotion. Yeah. That totally makes sense. These people are, I suppose, like if somebody's looking for a new commercial spot, they might think like, okay, here's the amount of square footage I need. Here's my budget. Like it's really, here's the traffic I need out front, like on the frontage or the road that drives right by it. Right. Like these actual numbers. Right. Yeah. If you have a franchise, say, that's looking for a commercial space to lease, they're going to have their minimum requirements of we need so many vehicles per day, it's all a very specific square foot amount in a lot of cases. They've done this before. They know what's needed. So it's a matter of fitting, putting all those pieces in place for them. So that's pretty sweet. Yeah, it's interesting. I've never listed anything commercial wise. I've helped a guy who's looking for some commercial space. There seems to be a lot listed. It's like, and they seem to last. They're on market usually a lot longer. Yeah. Quite a bit different than residential. Yeah, for sure. It's a completely different world than residential. I think in Dubuque, it tends to get blended together a lot. But they really are two different worlds. I guess from my perspective, anyway. There are a lot of signs up right now. That's true. And it depends on what type of property it is too. So I think by and large, commercial is broken down into retail, office, industrial, and multifamily. It would all be considered commercial properties, and definitely the retail and office space. There's vacancies. Industrial type of stuff and multifamily. The market's great. So it's a completely different world. So it's hard to just kind of stereotype commercial in one way. There's a lot of vacant space for lease. There are still a lot of things happening in the commercial world though, and even outside of just industrial and multifamily stuff. So and again, it's not nearly as visible as what the residential market is. There's a lot of stuff happening that sometimes the general public just never sees. So it's, and again, the role of a commercial agent is, to me, it's much more digging in the weeds, making calls, connecting people, pulling networks together. Whereas on the residential side, I see that as being more of an expertise in marketing and that type of thing. So they're two different approaches in my opinion. Gotcha. Cool. And so talk about, you got back into real estate investing a little bit. Yeah. Where are you at with that? What's going on? Not a ton of movement there, but so we picked up a threeplex downtown last spring. That's been going well. We put, I won't say a ton of money into it, but we made quite a few improvements on that. So it's been beneficial to upgrade the quality of a unit and see what see the difference in types of tenants that you get then too. So it's gone pretty well. So there's been some challenges, and I think location plays into that, but overall it's been good. So.
Did you refinance after the fixes?
No, we basically funded those improvements and did not refinance at this point. So we teased out a couple of offers to sell and that type of stuff, but it's something that we'll look to do. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That's good stuff. So this triplex. Do you remember, was it listed when you got it?
It wasn't. And I mean, it's thing that a lot of investors struggle to do. It just, you talk to enough people say that you're looking for something to buy, and you're in the market to buy. If you hear of anything, appreciate knowing about it and all that type of stuff. And it was just one of those things. So actually through my father, came across somebody and he said, yeah, I might be interested in selling something. It was mostly vacant. He had one of the 1-bedroom units rented at the time. So there were 2 vacant units, and went and took a look at a couple of properties he had. And, we talked about things, and he decided to hang on to a couple of others, but, this was there, and it's like, you know what, you have, fortunately, have some cash laying around, and you need to do something with that right now. And with the way the economy is, so it was just buy it and figure it out. And so we did, and stuck some manual labor into it. And part of that is getting the kids out and doing something. So
nice.
They were there this spring, painting the garage and all of that type of stuff. So it's good.
That's good. Do you, where was I going to go? Talk about when you bought that place, did you do it in an LLC, or did you do it in your own personal name, or like, did you even? Yeah,
we did it in an LLC. It's for something like that, it's probably, talk to a tax advisor or attorney or something like that, I suppose. But, for us, it made sense to do that, partnering with a couple of family members on that. So for us, it made sense to do that. I don't think it would have needed to be done. From a tax aspect for us, it's not going to make a difference at the end of the day, but it's something that we look to grow and all of that type of stuff. If we can expand that portfolio, then it will make sense to do that at that point. So
gotcha. Do you have other investment like stocks and stuff? Like, I mean, you worked with all these this background.
Yeah, we do have some. It's been,
Bitcoin,
anything cash I want to do in real estate. I just think those hard assets are the way to go. It's just me, the Bitcoin thing is interesting. I haven't jumped on board yet. So
neither have I. Well,
it's pretty volatile right now too.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I don't think it's a bad thing. From my perspective, if I did it, it's going to be, not too much. It's always good to be diversified, I think, but it wouldn't be too big of a purchase.
Yeah.
In Bitcoin,
gotcha.
It has yet to prove itself, I think. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, cash right now is just a really bad place to be, quite honestly. Just from an economic standpoint. The threat of inflation is one thing. We haven't seen it, obviously, for years, and it's been threatened, or everyone thinks it's going to go there and have for years. But just the way things shake out with the way the stock market has risen, things are ripe to break, I think. And so owning assets is going to be a whole lot better than owning cash. So
I agree. So it seems like you follow, or you keep up to date in stocks a little bit, or?
Yeah, I try to. I don't get into the weeds a whole lot on some of the stocks and things like that, but just kind of economic indicators in general. So it's, just kind of big, the macro picture of things is, all I really spend the time on. It's, just enough to dabble in things between work items during the day. So
yeah. So, where do you think this year's like the market this year? What do you if people call you up, hey Steve, how's the market going? What are you telling them?
Looking to buy or sell or what?
Oh, I like it. I really like it.
Just overview. Housing market is still going to be gangbusters. I think there's going to be some, hopefully some relief with some proposed developments in that will relieve a little bit of the housing market. It won't take care of it by any means, but I think we'll see some good construction this year that will help with things a little bit. But it's still going to be gangbusters. Like I said, if you have a choice between cash or getting cheap money from a lender right now, take the money from the lender and buy an asset, buy a house. I think that would be my course of action. I think that's a place to be right now. But commercial wise, I think it'll be slow going, but I think we're going to be getting back to business. At least I hope and expect, with people feeling comfortable with vaccines out there and that type of stuff, that the pandemic slows down and things get a little bit back to normal. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the office space. There's a lot of vacant office space in Dubuque right now. And I don't think anyone's really too sure of what that looks like going forward yet. Everybody has a pretty good, or some people have a pretty good idea of what that looks like, but it'll be, I think it'll be slow going on that side of things.
Yeah.
So, retail, obviously there's been a shift away from big box retail and that type of stuff. That sector's, there's things happening, but it's going to struggle for a little bit too. So I think there's a shift there. So
yeah, kind of a COVID shift, if you will.
COVID shift, but it started before that too,
Really?
with online retailers and things like that, and the stores downsizing, those types of things. Interestingly, some of the furniture stores around town making moves and things like that. Most of them are looking for more space. So that's just an industry within the retail sector that is doing really, really well right now. And furniture. And they're actually looking for more space. So, and have been able to help a couple of those folks out too. So, it's been a good year, and I don't think things will slow down at all in 2021, I guess.
2021,
yeah, it's
new
here.
year.
It's here.
It's here. And we talk about, we have a bit on the show too. Residentially, like Dubuque is a bit different than, some of the coastal city or bigger cities. Like in 2008, there was this huge crash, but we didn't quite feel it as much here in Dubuque. In some of these other big cities, there are people who are talking about a big crash in their real estate market. Residentially, I don't feel that coming along. I don't tell people that I think there's one. I genuinely don't feel like there's probably going to be a residential crash in our market, just because, the interest rates are low and our inventory is so low. Is the commercial side, is that a whole different game? Like when we talk about like the state of the market, and does it vary city by city? I don't know. I feel like I'm not very educated on the commercial side, or at least especially not as educated as you are.
Well, and there's people out there that I look up to in that regard too. But from my perspective, the commercial market in Dubuque is, I would say, similar, just in general, is similar to the residential market, in that we're still a very linear market in Dubuque. So we're not going to see those major fluctuations. So if you have a 2,000 employee company that changes significantly, then obviously that plays a role into the economy in Dubuque overall, and which, real estate is then affected. But outside of that, in this situation, the pandemic, I don't see that as having a substantial effect. So you're seeing a lot of, you mentioned commercial lease space. So with a lot of spaces available, people would rightly probably so assume that, to lease a space is going to be really cheap right now because there's so much available. Well, it's tough. I mean, market rates are still holding firm. They haven't really changed on the lease side of things for the most part, mostly because the owners of these buildings are still in a very good position, and they're not. Values have increased, so their equity position is still firm. So they're not feeling the heat of a lender or something like that at this point, anyway. If it goes on for a long time, then that might be different. But assuming we kind of come out of this pandemic in 2021, I don't see a huge shift in even lease rates, even though there's a lot of inventory on the market. For that reason, owners of the buildings aren't having to necessarily. Obviously, they want to. But they're not really in a position to have to lease that out just because over the past several years, their equity positions have been built up on it. So
with appreciation,
yeah. And I mean, it's been a good economy, for a good number of years now. So, again, with low rates and everything that's going on in the economy, there's so much cash waiting to buy these places. So even if they're not fully leased, there's, people are demanding this. So they're going to hang on to those as much as they possibly can, even though incomes on those buildings might not be at the levels of what they really, really want with a vacant space or two in there. Yeah. They're still going to hang on to them because where else are they going to go unless they absolutely have to sell?
Yeah. Yeah, so they'd rather, leave it on the market for lease and wait for that perfect tenant or wait for the really good tenant that's going to pay what they're asking. Gotcha.
It's a long game. Yeah. And you were asking about residential, what's that market going to do? I think the same is true. It's better to own a house than not in the long term. In this economy, I don't think cash. Personally, I don't think cash is a good place to be. And if you can make it happen some way somehow, I would be trying to do. Obviously, not get ridiculous and totally stick your neck out there. But if there's a way to do that, I would be trying to do that, even in a really tight buyer's market.
Absolutely. So negotiation wise, do you feel it being much different residentially versus commercial?
Totally. Yeah. It's
just a numbers game in commercial.
Yeah. It's a numbers game. I would say and I don't want to say that, I would say it's a much more affluent type of negotiation. But that's not to discount what happens on the residential side by any means. It's a totally different approach. Again, the longer sales cycles, I think, play into that. So, where in the housing market, you might have a negotiation that's going back and forth several times in a few hours. On the commercial side, it might be several weeks. Oh, okay. In some cases, it's quicker if you're, if it's a small commercial space for lease or something, it's a smaller thing. But on some of the bigger deals, it might be weeks before there's communication between the two parties. And that's partly intentional, and it's all part of the game, I'll call it. It's certainly not a game, but you just have to be prepared for those types of things. So.
And you just learn more by doing it. You just learn by doing it.
You learn by doing.
Do you study? Do you study certain people, markets? Do you try to sharpen the saw that way, or do you just you're learning more and more by doing it?
Yeah. And I'd love to learn by doing it more. But in any free time, it's trying to find the people out there that are doing it, talking to those people. I'm going to be meeting with an agent down in the I-380 corridor tomorrow. Just learn how they do things and that type of stuff. There are people. So another podcast, one of the podcasts I listen to is Michael Bull. He owns a realty firm, very prominent and successful realty firm down in Atlanta. He has a podcast all about commercial real estate. So I'll listen to that pretty religiously. Some of the resources, it's just reading everything possible through, LoopNet CoStar is a good resource in that regard, kind of a nationwide known resource. Multifamily stuff, Ken McElroy is somebody that I'll listen to pretty religiously. I think what he's been able to accomplish, and I think he was very opportunistic in the value add space, which he'll tell you right now that those things are really, really hard to come by. But I think it's really interesting what he's done and some of the things that he's doing still. So
that's cool. Good stuff. What's a day in the life of Steve Davis?
Oh man. Every day is completely different. I know that there's a lot of talk lately about habits and structure and things like that. I don't have enough of it, quite honestly. But it's get up and drink a lot of coffee, coffee snob of sorts. So there's not too much time that goes by without coffee for me in the day, but get up and for the most part, I'll be in the office, and that's coming from kind of the W-2 philosophy that you're always on, you're always on and in the office when the workday's going on. So I'll be there most of the time. The last few months, it's been a little bit different with the kids being home. I've done a lot of work from home while they're, on their computers and things like that in school on their hybrid thing. But for the most part, I just like being in the office. So it's a lot of in the morning, try to crank out some of the tasks and the busy work type of stuff, follow-up items, prep for later on, and then, late morning after the afternoon, hopefully be out and about more so. So that ideally that would be the perfect day.
The ideal day for Steve Davis. Yep. Gotcha. Do you have anything interesting on your bucket list?
Nothing really truly defined at this point. From a work aspect, there's some things, again, I mentioned Ken McElroy and what he's doing with syndication stuff, I think is really interesting. I guess the 20 year thing, and there's no plan in place or specific written down goal or anything like that. But the really long-term thing is, do we create a REIT, and look at doing something like that? I think that would, again, there's no plan or any thought beyond, that'd be kind of cool to do.
Yeah.
But that type of stuff is interesting to me.
Gotcha.
Personal level, not a whole lot right now. So it's just focusing on work, quite honestly. So.
And you love it though.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So it's, you go from, not wanting to get out of bed to, can I get up yet and get going? So it's a rush. So it's a charge.
That's good.
So,
what about, I see you have a very good presence on social media. How do you balance that?
Oh, I would call it not good presence. I'm not good at social media, or I don't feel like I'm good at social media anyway. So, spend way too much time out there. The content, obviously it's good to put out content and things like that. I'd like that to be more vibrant, but it's just not something I've focused on. I'm kind of at this point too in my realty business that, there's a lot of day-to-day work, but it's, and you talk about at what point do you hire assistants and that type of stuff. I really don't think I'm there yet. And especially if there's some focus on commercial where sales cycles are longer and there's a little less paperwork and that type of stuff. It's just one of those things where, I should be spending more time on social media. I'm just not. Yeah. So, but, it consumes too much of my time, quite honestly, as far as just seeing what's out there and scrolling. But we'll see.
Yeah. So, well, and you can't be great at every single thing, right?
Yeah.
You kind of figured out what your niche is, and you've kind of doubled down on that. And I really like that.
Yeah.
It's probably what majority of people would recommend you should probably do.
Right. Right.
So I like it. I like it a lot. So where do you see, you talked a little bit about REITs, where do you see kind of the future of your business going, real estate?
I'm just going to keep plugging away and doing what I'm doing and build this business to whatever I can. Obviously you define goals and things like that. So that is the focus right now, is just seeing what I can do with the realty business. in the next couple of years, really think about what is the next step, I think. So, I mean, assuming all goes well between now and then, it is really what is the next step. So,
Yeah.
So.
Well, good. All righty. Let's rock into these closing questions.
Okay.
What's your favorite book?
Well, we mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think that's been the most beneficial book for me. I would have to go back to in the time I spent in Colorado and climbing and doing some of that stuff in those days. I read Endurance it's the story of Sir Ernest Shackleton and his team. He was a British explorer around 1900, 1912, and his team were trying to be the first to reach the South Pole. Oh. And they're in their big wooden boat and gets landlocked by ice. And it's a nearly 2-year ordeal before they get rescued. And it's interesting because they all survived, and having, going from a couple month type of expedition to having to survive for several years in just an obscene environment. It's one of those stories of incredible survival. And for Shackleton, it's from a leadership aspect. I mean, people literally go crazy in that type of environment and lose their minds and do crazy things. He was able to hold them all together. And I mean, there were physical feats, crossing South Georgia Island with no gear, glaciers and all of that type of stuff to reach the port on the other side of the island. Just absolutely unheard of. And modern day, a couple people actually tracked that route and did that with modern gear and, very experienced mountaineers and all that type of stuff. Wow. And they're like, it's just absolutely impossible in that day and age. So the physical aspect, but to me, it's the mental thing. And so understanding the mind and strengthening your mind and being as strong as you can in your head is something to me that's just really interesting. And that I think was the biggest success in that whole expedition. So reading the story and hearing and understanding all that went on in that expedition was pretty incredible. So.
And you read that a long time ago.
Yeah, that would have been, I don't know, sometime around 2000. It would have been after college, but probably before we moved back. Yeah.
Jeez.
I haven't gone back to it. But.
You, it must have been a really good one because you just summed it up perfect. I mean, I've never read it, so I don't really know if you're missing any parts, but you were able to vividly, retell that story. It must have been outstanding.
Yeah. It's one of those where it's kind of the edge of your seat type of books, so I wasn't much of a reader growing up, and then I started reading some of those stuff. So some of those things. So it was interesting from that standpoint, but it just held my attention, and it's something that is just absolutely incredible. And somebody that you can learn something from, I think.
Yeah. So. I got it written down. Is there a book on it, or is there a movie on it? Documentary, anything?
There's probably documentaries and things like that, but I don't know that I've seen anything. So, but yeah.
Gotcha. What are your hobbies? What do you do for fun? Really gonna let loose, have fun? What are you doing?
Work. That seems to be what it is lately. It's just 100% focus on doing more from a work aspect, but a few things on the side. I mean, the kids take up a lot of time. So we have 3 kids, 15, 13, and 9, and they're involved with quite a few things, and it's fun to see them grow and do those things with them. Personally, I do a little bit of woodworking, and so it's going down in the timber and cutting out a crotch out of a log and throwing it on the lathe and turning out a bowl or something like that.
All right, we got to dive into that.
Okay.
That sounds cool as hell.
Yeah. So
I'm interested.
Yeah. So, lathe work is for most people, it's definitely an art. It's a form of art. And so there's, you can take, what's interesting about it is you can take a piece of wood that, if it's still wet, if it's not dried, then obviously you're going to have issues with the cracking and stuff like that. But if you get if you get a log and there's a crotch in the log, where it's branched out, that has some of the best figuring in the whole log in it. The grain isn't just a straight clean grain, so it provides a lot of you can find feathering and figure in the wood there. So when you finish that, it looks incredible. And so, it's literally taking what is firewood or wood rotting down in the timber, and cleaning it up, and making it into somewhat of a round blank, and attaching it to the lathe and taking the chisels and churning out some sort of a shape, a bowl or a vase or something like that. So it's kind of cool.
So bowls and vases, what else have you made? What's the coolest thing you've made?
The coolest, probably the most recent thing is Heather wanted a new bedroom set, so a pair of end tables and a bed. I still have to do the dresser, so that's still on the list. But
dang.
Yeah, it was kind of a fun thing. So it's she has a Pottery Barn magazine, says that would be really cool. I want to get rid of our old nightstands that are golden oak and they're ugly and they're not functional and all that type of stuff, and I want this. And I said, I could probably make that. We'll try it. So, so that's fun. It's keeping your mind sharp, I guess, is the best way to put it, is seeing something and trying to figure out the dimensions and the measurements and how the pieces all fit together. And it's just kind of like a big kid's Lego project.
Yeah,
so,
therapeutic.
Yeah.
So you take the raw wood right out of the timber, and you have more than just a lathe. You have everything you need to produce a piece of furniture.
Yeah, so for something like that, I'm buying it from the mill because it's dried. Then they'll mill it, cut the logs, and dry it in the kiln. So the wood is stable. So it's not all wood moves.
Yeah.
And so to dry it, you get it to move as the least amount possible. So over time, you don't see splits and joints pulling away from each other and things like that. A lot of times that's because the wood was wet when it was built. So get it from the mill, and it's rough lumber, and you plane it down, dimension it, and cut your pieces and figure out how to attach it all together. So
that's so dang cool. You got like a capped garage or like a separate building that you got?
It's a capped garage, and so it's a really small space, and like I said, I made a bed and end tables, but didn't have enough room to make the dresser at the same time. So it was like, okay, we'll do that later on. But yeah, it's good. So table saw, planer, track saws, and joiners and that type of stuff. So the essentials that you need to do stuff like that. So
how'd you ever get into that?
Well, my father-in-law, he did quite a bit of woodworking. My dad is he was an auto mechanic, so he's extremely handy. He bought a lot of those tools and started doing it. And it's like, okay, I'll do some of that stuff. And it's just kind of a, distraction or a release, when you need something else, I don't know. It's just I don't really know how I got into it. It's just, I've been close to it, I guess, and people around me have done it. So I do a little bit of it and try to figure it out as I go. So
that's awesome.
So
cool. Sweet. If you had to point to the one thing you either learned, developed, or were just born with that makes you successful, what would that be?
Work ethic. I would say it's a work ethic. Part of that, identifying figuring out who I was, it became very clear that for me to be happy, I have to be doing something. I have to be working. Goals are a part of that too, but I'm happiest when I'm working, quite honestly. And I mean, in doing stuff with the kids and all, of course, that's important to me, but being busy. So it's sometimes you just have to dig in and go and do it. And that's never been an issue for me. So I'm appreciative of that. I think that's more genetic than anything. It comes kind of from a blue collar family, and it's just what I was born with, I think. So, but it served me well, I think. So sometimes you just got to grind through things and go for it. So.
Very good. Who is someone you're wanting to meet, if you could meet anyone?
This is a tough question for me. I don't, I'd like to have let's meet President Trump right now. I don't really have anybody that it's like, oh man, that guy is super cool. You meet people and everybody's different. Everybody has their story, and people are people in my mind. So you want to try to emulate certain people in certain ways. If I had to name one name, I think a true leader, and I know he's been a little bit politically charged lately, but Drew Brees is somebody that I think is just a cool human being. So I think he's the same way, a really hard worker. I think deep down he believes if you do the work, the right thing will happen. And, and he said some of those things publicly as well. I think the one thing that stood out to me is an interview after a game. A reporter on the field asked, what do you tell your boys? What do you tell your kids after the game? And he said, just told them, if you work hard enough, you can achieve anything. And it's like, that's it. To me, that's it right there.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Simple and good.
I mean, he's not unique in that way, but it's just one of those people that I guess he's more of a public figure than a lot of people who might have a similar mindset. Yeah. Right. It's too bad. Like if you throw Drew Brees in the NFL like 20 years earlier, he probably would have been like at the time, like one of the greatest of all time, but he's just like, he's playing around so many other, like Tom Brady, who has also been one of the greatest of all time, Aaron Rodgers and, all these other great quarterbacks that are in the league right now. Yeah.
Peyton Manning. Yeah. He just it's too bad that he wasn't sooner, because really he has tons of accolades and he's won a Super Bowl and like, he's a great guy, he honestly would be so cool.
He's to me, I think he's a really underrated, fantastic player too. So yeah. I think Brady gets a credit for kind of the football knowledge, I obviously, did you play quarterback?
No.
Okay.
No.
Linebacker. Okay.
How about you?
I was tight end, linebacker, kind of played everywhere, kind of a utility person. So Tom Brady, I think, is known for being able to read the defenses and being smart and just knowing what people are doing before they do it. And Brees has some of that, I think, but it's just the pure accuracy for him. So, but yeah, on the field,
he'd be so cool to meet.
Yeah,
he'd be good. What are you currently focusing on, and how can the listeners help you? Shout out goals or anything else you're trying to work on.
Yeah. So, again, it's just building the realty business right now. And, so, I mean, as I say, I'm helping, people achieve their goals. I'm truly focused on working as hard as I can for clients in that regard. Working both ends yet, the residential and the commercial side, but there's definitely a focus on doing some commercial and doing it well. So, I think that would be the biggest thing. And like this, I really enjoy talking to people, getting to know them, hearing their story. I think that, I think people like to do that. People like to tell their story. It makes them feel good. It benefits me. I like to hear other people too. It just, I kind of think it makes you a better person to have, or know people's experiences and that type of thing. So, welcome conversations with people anytime.
Awesome. All right. Bonus fun question. Here it is. You've probably listened to a couple of these, but I'm going to surprise you with this one.
Uh-oh.
Where does a guy go to up their wardrobe if they want to have a nice professional business attire wardrobe?
No question, shop local, go to Graham's. So
go to Graham's. Yeah. Heard it here first. What, so how many blazers do you have?
Oh, not only a handful. Only a couple, 3 or 4. Yeah.
And you mix and match. So
mix and match. Yeah.
Mix and match with different shirts, and then you can mix and match with different pants.
Yeah, exactly.
And then get a few different shoes.
It's like I'm like I said, I'm kind of the utility player. Yeah. That's the way it is. So
heck yeah.
No, yeah, it's what's really intriguing to me is there's a thought process out there to dress exactly the same every day. And it's like, that would make things really easy. So
I've totally thought about that.
yeah.
I think I've tried to adopt that a little bit. My father-in-law wears the same exact professional attire. He's got like 10 of the same shirts and 5 of the same pants and 5 of the same shoes. And
Yeah.
I've thought about it a little bit. It's crossed my mind a little bit. You got good variety going on.
Yeah. I like the thought. So we'll see where that goes.
I think there's something to be said too about like dressing professionally. I was just thinking about it this morning on my walk to the car. It's like, you always, if you meet somebody, you might, every time you meet somebody, it's like you got one shot at a first impression. And like, how do you want to be known at? How do you want to be seen? Do you want to be seen as the real estate professional, or do you want to be seen as the real estate guy who has all the knowledge or whatever, but maybe dresses down a little bit more like you? I don't know. It just, some people might rock a little bit more casual attire, and that works great for them. But I guess it definitely says something about who you want to be, I would think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So cool. I like it. The best dressed on the podcast so far. So cool. Well, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Real Estate in the Tri-State. This was episode number 23 with Steve Davis. And if you're getting any value from the show, please like and subscribe and share. I really do appreciate the support, and hoping that you are learning from some of these experienced guests that have been on the show, like Steve. So thank you for listening to this week's episode. Steve, thanks for being on.
Absolutely. A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All righty. Let's take it out.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Real Estate in the Tri-State. We want to encourage all of our listeners to send in any and all real estate questions to us at rottlerpodcast@gmail.com. More details in our show notes.
And as always, let's have a great day, folks.